Alright guys, welcome to another session of Learning with me. My name is Ngane Emmanuel and you are watching a lesson of which is part of a series of building secure, scalable, fault tolerant and low latency APIs with Java and Spring Boot. And we are currently in the security part. We've talked a lot about security, we've had practical and theoretical sessions, and we've seen SQL injections, we've seen mass assignment, we've seen privilege escalation, we've seen rate limiting, we've seen course, right? We've seen and a few others, right? And we've seen implementation of defenses, we've seen authentication authorization using of DTOs, and we've seen implementation of authentication in the filter level, authorization in the interceptor level. We've seen global validation of request and sectional validation of request. We also today I said let me do a video because the last class I promised to talk about method validation, and it's going to be a short one, at least not more than 10 minutes. It's just going to be an example. And method validation is almost similar to field validation. If you look at our DTOs, we have our update requests. We did something like this in one of our videos where we created this annotation, which basically checks for if this string contains special characters. And I think the design method here is Facade, which basically allows us to present a simplified interface to use that hides complicated implementation. I hope I am not mistaken that. Let me first of all see. Let me connect to the internet. I think it's Facade, right? Yeah. And throughout this video, we have used a couple of design patterns, which we've used strategy in our implementation of authentication, which was very important to change behavior at runtime. I've used factory, kind of. I think this is have we used no, we're not used. We've not inherently used. We've not used factory, at least not a classical way, because I think the anyway, yeah, no, but yeah, we have used, I think, most of the strategy and Facade. Again, I hope I am getting the Facade right. Yeah, this is a continuation of my other video. So, what is Facade? Facade. Yeah, a simplified and high-level interface to a complex subsystem. Yeah, so libraries and framework. It acts as a front desk, wrap hiding internal complexity. Yes. Basically, this is our simplified interface that we use. We simply just call this on our string, and that's one of the power of annotation. And it's similar things for method, right? And if you look at our interceptor, we build the implementation from, we read the request for our interceptor method. Where is it? Interceptor configuration. So I did a part here. Then we update interceptor, and when we registered it, we read the path interceptor config. When we registered it, we read the path, right? Something we can do almost something similar for method validation. For example, if you're in your service method, let's look at service. I know there's a lot of files open, so I'm just going to go ahead here and close them. Okay. This is from the last video, so again, we're following through. Don't try to, if you are new here, please watch the previous video to get context. But let's go to our service. yeah, Java and the boilerplate code. So if you look at the user service, right, in the interceptor method, we checked for, how can I put it? We checked for role-based access control, right? But say you have a policy-based access control where you have even more fine-grained policies, where it's not just about having a role of a user, you need to have a user with a right policy, right? Because certain functions, certain methods will not have like read or write policies. How do you do that, right? So with role-based access control, you mostly do it, you can do that with very wider sections like controllers and other things, right? But with policy-based access control, that becomes even much more fine-grained, right? It's not just about a request to get an update or to do something. It's about or having a role of a user that can perform certain actions, but having a specific permission to perform a specific action, right? And most of the times for policy-based access control, you need to control the methods themselves. Okay. For example, if I want to update a user, right, I can write a policy that says only update. So here I can present with an annotation that can say use or admin. I can say admin right only. Okay. And this is going to check if the user is an admin and has the policy of right. Okay, so we can have that. Okay, what if we are calling, or if you have like, let me say, a field, you can have even more fine-grained annotation here, right? And that says you are checking for something. Let me say you're calling an external service and you have to check the output, right? And that output needs to be validated across maybe a complicated validation, something like that. You know, you can call the service here, then you check the output here with the annotation or something. I don't know if that, you know, no, that's actually the field. Yeah, you could do that. I think you could do that. But essentially, it is to present a much more simpler explanation. You can do something like this where you have like an admin right only, right? So essentially, before this method, even if it is called, wherever this method is called, okay, what will happen is that the your application will check if the user, as you have seen how we got the odd context, the user has the admin right policy in all its policies, okay, and it only executes if the user has the admin right policy, okay. So if I call, say I create like a public void execute, right? I just want to execute the point, and I call this update user here. I just call new um, updated user. You know the request. What happens is that if I call this will check if I have the required policies to perform this particular action. Okay, and every other method that calls that. And so you can even you can pair it with if you pair it again with transactional again, either this method executes or none of them execute. Okay, so if this method doesn't execute, we have like a rollback here, and then you can have like multiple different other methods, right? Other method, method two. I have other method one, other method two, And each of these methods can have their own different policies and different things that they require. Okay. And again, it is just a simple check, right? And essentially, you are making sure that all of these execute and they are successful, or they don't execute at all. And you know what? Let me see if I have. So I want to see something just for much more clarification. Let's ask ChatGPT. I want to explain the role of the transactional in this code, right? And what I want to really get explanation is that you understand that you can pair it with a lot of things. I don't know. No, let me just quick question blah blah blah. Really does tells run the method inside a database transaction. Meanwhile, all DB operations inside it are treated as a unique unit of work, right? The either or execute commit blah blah blah. This is implemented using proxies blah blah blah. So transactional execute. So the transaction starts execute blah blah blah. Execute transaction, update user, other methods, transaction commit, right? So everything inside execute runs in one transaction. So you see again, if you remove that, then each repository call becomes its own transaction. Again, not really good. So what happens again, I just wanted to do that clarification so that you see that what I'm talking about much clearly, if my explanation was not clear enough. What happens is that when it calls this method, it's going to check for this, and every DB operation, for example, if this DB operation is not done well, it it's going to roll back to its initial state. And the moment this does not completely execute, all of the methods in here does not execute properly, this is false, and all of this is rolled back because this is not successful. So there's actually no need to run all of that. So you just kind of end the entire thing there. So what happens is you could even look at the transactional. It's kind of like a method level validation logic, okay, where it validates that all the methods have completely executed successfully before it commits the change, right? All the DB methods. And that's exactly what you can do. And so we can have like a write only to check for admin policies, right? To check for different policies and different validation. And you can also have like other validation, not just within the method. You can also have field validation, like we already discussed below. And that's just what I wanted to point out here, that this is all very possible. So for example, okay, I created an aspect to mimic the pre-authorized method that Spring offers, Spring Web offers, because in Spring Web you have pre-authorized. So that's add. Interesting. Is it like, I think there's a pre-authorized. I don't know if I am including I have the right dependencies, but I think there is a there's pre-update. Yeah, this is before update, this is before persist, this is before destroy, before remove, this is after remove, post or present, duplicated, interesting, update, or is, anyway, why I'll check it later. There is a method that is popularly used, pre-authorized, which basically check for authority before executing a method, and that's something I was explaining here. And I created one. It is inside security, interceptor, and the aspect. And This is it, which is require role, and basically the annotation is a require role, right? And you can use add require role. Um, I think it's like has role or something. No, what did I before an annotation require role check role. So yeah, this make sure it executes before annotation require role admin. Yeah, so we can have that. Okay, sorry, that's not supposed to have like that. And what this would do is basically check if this has a role. So if I kind of like put a breakpoint here, and I think this is the update user, right? So I'll put a breakpoint there, and I would run that, and I'll send a request, which is what we were doing the last time, the last video, the same request, the same token. Um, I want to believe that it will hit that breakpoint, except I'm not using that well. And yeah, so you see it hits the breakpoint. Why? Because it is forcing you to authenticate your role, whether or not you have an admin role. If not, it's going to return forbidden. And so right now we don't have an admin role, so we're going to get authorization required, and instead of 500 error which we're passing, we are getting a new forbidden exception, which we should just yeah, so the forbidden is getting a 500, which I think that is coming from our global exception handler forbidden. So the forbidden exception, and let me see. Yes, so our global exception handler is, I don't think it's handling the forbidden exception. So we have the weight limiting. Yeah, it's not handling the forbidden exception yet. So we're having an internal server error. So we can just create that custom exception handler, and we are handling the forbidden exception.class, and then we are going to put that response status dot, sorry, dot, which is forbidden, and we're going to just put the public string handle forbidden exception browser, and same thing, we're going to return the message, right? And if we just restart that application again and remove the breakpoint from there, then we should get authentication required needs rule. Okay, of course, don't make it too obvious like this. I just want to make sure that everything is running. Oh crap, that started already, so I need to restart it just to make sure that these changes work. And it's about 19 minutes. This should be short and simple. There we go. Authorization required need roles admin, right? So that is basically it from method level. Okay, obviously you can have your own proprietary logic within your methods to perform different checks, but also for much more global or reusable logic, such as role-based access control, policy-based access control, you can extract them and provide an annotation, which is a simplified interface. So you're making use of the facade design pattern, which allows you to present something, a simplified interface such as that is reusable, and you can have the methods, the implementation behind behind that. and so allowing your developers or your team to reuse this, and you can pass any information here. It can be a role, it can be whatever, right? It can be a user, and you can, it also depends again on how you design your access levels and how you choose to go. You can go role-based access control, policy-based access control. You can even go with attribute-based access control. And a lot of different checks can be done here, and that's the beauty about annotation is that this is self-reading, and so if someone is reading your application, it says, okay, before this is going to run, it's going to require to have a role admin before it runs, and so I don't need to understand what is happening here. I just know that I just need to have an admin role, and this is going to run, and I can reuse this by passing different different variables. Unlike maybe annotations like admin only, right? If I can do the same thing by doing admin only, right? But this one, you know, it's not flexible, right? It only checks for admin only, okay? And something like this allows you to reuse it on different role policies. But again, each of them will have their own use cases where they are suitable. And I just wanted to show you method-based validation, something like that. We have seen field validation, we have seen this is method validation, we have seen section validation, or seen more global validation. So thus far, I think we've covered everything. We've covered authentication, authorization, field level validation, method level validation. In the next class, we're going to be tackling different security, defense, and threats. And this has been fun, and I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy it, and I love that I'm able to do these demos and show you in practice. And it also reminds me for the things I've forgotten and learning new things for errors I get to make, right? So like and share if you find this useful. Subscribe to the channel, comment your questions or your doubt below. Connect with me on my social media, and go to the repo, download, clone the repository, start it, and let's just learn and build software properly with security first, right? Thank you all for watching, and until next time, have a great day.